just about less than 30 minutes ago. Michael Flynn came out of that courthouse after pleading guilty to lying to the FBI. He did not make a comment to any of the reporters, and you can see, a huge number of cameras and reporters there trying to get some kind of comment, but he did release a statement. This is the statement he released. It's going to be too hard for you to read on this screen because it is so small, but let me go through the salient points for you. Michael Flynn, in his statement, says, "It has been extraordinarily painful to endure these many months of false accusations of treason." Then I'm going to go down further, where he says, "I am working to set things right. My guilty plea and agreement to cooperate with the special counsel's office reflect a decision I made in the best interests of my family and of our country." And this is the last line in that. "I accept full responsibility for my actions." We're covering this story on all angles for you, the political ramifications, the economic ramifications. The Dow has dropped dramatically. On the political front, CBC's Ellen Morrow is on the story. She joins me live from Washington. You know the famous address she's in front of on Pennsylvania Avenue. You're watching certainly for reaction from there, but put this into a neat little package for me. What more have you learned, Ellen?
Well, Suhanna, this is obviously a major development in this Russia investigation today. Michael Flynn signaling that he is cooperating with that investigation. And of course, he has been an extremely prominent figure throughout. He was a prominent figure during the Trump campaign. And of course, he was, for a very short time, the national security advisor in this administration before being forced out of office over conversations with the former Russian ambassador, Sergei Kislyak, the same conversation that he is now pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI about. So again, a major figure, although we have had some reaction from the White House trying to downplay all of this. It was the same sort of message we heard from the White House after the indictments against Paul Manafort, for example, saying nothing about the guilty plea or charge implicates anyone other than Flynn. Also saying, this is from Ty Cobb, the White House lawyer, that the conclusion of this phase of the special counsel's work demonstrates again that the special counsel is moving with all deliberate speed and clears the way for a prompt and reasonable conclusion. So the White House sort of painting this as something that signals that this is moving forward and not implicating anyone in the White House. But Flynn is the first person who once was part of the administration to face charges in this probe, Suhanna.
We know that Trump has previously referred to Flynn as, quote, a wonderful man. Usually, Ellen, by this time of the day at noon Eastern, we're talking about some tweet or other from Trump, but there's been a deafening silence, if you will, on the social media front from the U.S. president. What do you read into that? And what, in fact, is the lawyer saying, who is speaking, I suppose, on behalf of the White House? What else is he saying about this guilty plea?
Well, that really is the main message, again, trying to downplay this, trying to say this is about Michael Flynn and Michael Flynn only. And as I mentioned, that was a similar reaction in terms of the theme to the indictments against Paul Manafort and Rick Gates, for example. The White House said, this is just has to do with Paul Manafort, which those indictments did. But again, it was that effort to downplay. We also saw that in terms of what happened with George Papadopoulos. He was a campaign aide who pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI about contacts he had with Russians during the campaign, contacts in which he was trying to set up some kind of meeting with Russian officials. And when that news came out, we also had the White House really try to downplay Papadopoulos, saying, oh, we don't really, he was a very fringe figure. But of course, there was a social media post showing him sitting at a table with then candidate Donald Trump and Attorney General Jeff Sessions. So it's the same kind of playbook in terms of the reaction to this news today. Of course, there will be a lot of eyes on Donald Trump's Twitter account, and it has been a very active week on Twitter, even for Donald Trump's standards by the president. There will be a lot of eyes watching, and we'll just have to wait and see what he posts. He did eventually post after the news about Paul Manafort several weeks ago, so we'll just have to keep our eyes out for that, Suhanna.
I know you're watching, and as we move forward, what else are you keeping an eye on? I mean, what happens now, Ellen?
Well, we know, judging by Michael Flynn's statement, that he is cooperating with the special counsel investigation, and that investigation is obviously just pushing ahead. Every few weeks, there's another indication that things are being taken, one step higher in terms of this investigation proceeding. For example, last week we had the story that Flynn's legal team was no longer sharing information with the Trump legal team. That was a signal that perhaps today's news in terms of this plea was coming. So, this is a story that keeps going on in the background. It fades every now and again as we focus kind of on what's happening on Capitol Hill. Today would have been a day where we'd be talking about tax reform had this news not happened. So this is a story that's in the background and really pushing ahead. And what's happening today is the biggest ramping up of this investigation that we've seen publicly so far.